In the summer of 1837, when England stood hesitantly between fading Georgian austerity and the tender bloom of a new Victorian reign, Ravenshire Manor loomed over its valley like a monument carved from pride itself. Its windows reflected the pale morning light with almost accusatory brilliance, as if the entire estate disapproved of imperfections, whether in the polish of its silver or in the character of those who dared enter its halls. It was into this world of rigid elegance that Catherine Hartwell stepped, her gloved hands clasped tightly before her, and her heart beating a nervous, determined rhythm beneath her modest, dove-gray gown. She had come not as a guest, nor even as a servant, but as a temporary companion to Lady Emma Blackthorne, the Duke's younger sister, an arrangement born of kindness on Emma's part and necessity on Catherine's. Catherine carried with her the quiet grace of a vicar's daughter, a beauty so natural it felt unstudied, almost secret, as though she were unaware of the arresting gentleness in her eyes or the delicate poise in her posture. At 23, she had only recently stepped beyond the boundaries of her parish life, and though that world had been small, it had taught her dignity, patience, and the art of finding solace in simplicity. Yet these virtues serve her poorly amidst Ravenshire's marble floors and scrutinizing eyes. Servants observed her with ill-concealed amusement, and visiting aristocratic ladies, those who prided themselves on lineage, regarded her with cutting curiosity, whispering behind fans as she passed. She felt each murmur like a pinprick beneath her skin, but she remained composed, driven by the hope that a temporary post here might lead to more stable employment elsewhere. The Duke himself was a different matter entirely. Adrian Blackthorne, only 26, yet already burdened with the full weight of his ancestral title, possessed a presence that filled the air before he even entered a room. His height, sharply defined features, and immaculately tailored black attire gave him an air of carved authority. Every glance from him seemed a judgment, every silence an expectation. Having inherited Ravenshire only months earlier after the sudden death of his father, he ruled the estate with a discipline that bordered on severity. He was known among the gentry as a man of strategic alliances, unyielding standards, and a temperament made colder by the political pressures now resting upon his shoulders. He believed an estate survived not through sentiment but through order, and Catherine, with her soft voice and earnest contradictions, unsettled that order more than he wished to admit. Their earliest interactions were strained but civil, shaped by formality and circumstance. Catherine's natural intelligence, however, often surfaced in conversation with Lady Emma, prompting her at times, innocently, to offer gentle corrections or observations that contrasted the Duke's views. Adrian tolerated it at first, yet beneath his composure flickered an irritation he could neither justify nor extinguish. Her presence reminded him of a truth he despised, that beneath his flawless exterior lay insecurities inherited from his father's missteps, insecurities he had spent years concealing. Catherine's quiet perceptiveness felt too much like exposure. The simmering tension found its spark on a gray morning when Catherine, attempting to deliver embroidery to Emma, mistakenly entered the wrong corridor, one reserved for guests of rank. Before she could retreat, 2 footmen caught sight of her and exchanged smirking remarks, their words carrying just far enough. By the time Catherine found Emma, cheeks flushed with embarrassment, the tale had grown its own legs and begun its journey across the manor. When whispers finally reached Adrian, they arrived twisted, that the vicar's daughter had consciously wandered where she should not, seeking attention, seeking impropriety, seeking him. He found her in the west drawing room, sunlight filtering across her features as she sorted a basket of thread. She rose immediately, startled by the hard set of his jaw. The room felt suddenly smaller, the silence sharp. "Miss Hartwell," he said, his voice level but edged in ice, "this arrangement with my sister was meant to be simple and temporary. Instead, you have given this household cause for gossip." Catherine blinked, taken aback. "Your Grace, I assure you." "Assurances," he cut in, "are wasted when actions speak otherwise. You're not my material." Get your things and leave Ravenshire at once." The words struck her with the force of a slap. For a moment she could not breathe. She had known humiliation before, small, petty cruelties from those who mistook modesty for weakness, but nothing like this, a public dismissal delivered with aristocratic precision. Yet even through the sting, she straightened her shoulders. If dignity was all she had left, she would hold it like armor. "As you command, Your Grace," she said quietly. "But know this, I have carried myself with nothing but honor since the day I arrived. I will not wear the guilt you place on me simply because it is easier than questioning the whispers you choose to believe." Her calm rebuke startled him. His composure wavered, but pride pressed him forward. "You presume too much," he said. "And you judge too quickly," she answered. The air between them grew taut. For one fraught moment, they stood close enough for Catherine to see the flicker in his eyes. Uncertainty, conflict, something unguarded. She turned to leave, but her movement drew him instinctively forward. When she paused to gather the last of her composure, he reached for her arm, not with force but out of urgency. "Do not walk away from me in defiance," he said, his voice low. "Then do not dismiss me in cruelty." Something in her tone, steady yet trembling, broke through the shield he had spent years constructing. Emotions surged against reason. Restraint cracked beneath the weight of feeling he had refused to acknowledge. Before either could fully understand the moment, he leaned in and kissed her. It was not gentle at first. It was born of conflict, of confusion, of two wills colliding. Yet within seconds the kiss softened, shaped by an unexpected tenderness, as though he had discovered in her calm he had been searching for without knowing. Catherine froze, breath caught, her thoughts dissolving into a whirl of shock and forbidden warmth. His hand lingered at her waist, not commanding but asking, hesitant, almost pleading. Then reality returned like a cold wind. He pulled away abruptly, horror flashing across his face at his own loss of discipline. She stood rooted to the floor, heart racing, lips tingling, unable to form a single word. For the first time since arriving at Ravenshire, she saw the Duke not as an untouchable figure carved from authority, but as a man, conflicted, flawed, undeniably human. "You must leave," he murmured, voice fractured. "Now!" And though her chest ached with the confusion, she could not untangle. Catherine nodded, gathered her belongings, and stepped into the waiting carriage. As Ravenshire's cold stone facade faded behind her, she pressed a hand to her lips, still feeling the echo of the kiss that should never have happened. The wheels began to turn, carrying her away from the manor and the man who had both wounded and awakened her. Yet as the road curved into the mist-covered hills, one truth pulsed through her very being. Whatever had ignited between them in that charged moment would not fade quietly. Rumor, like smoke rising from an unseen spark, drifted swiftly through the county in the days following Catherine's abrupt departure from Ravensshire. Villagers repeated tales with growing confidence, each person adding a flourish that made the story more thrilling or more damning. Some claimed the Duke had dismissed her for impropriety. Others insisted she had sought his attention with boldness unbecoming of a vicar's daughter. No one repeated the truth, for the truth was both quieter and far more dangerous. A kiss neither expected and neither fully understood. Catherine felt its imprint long after leaving the manor, though she forced herself to sink into parish life again, determined to repair the delicate threads of her disrupted peace. Her father welcomed her home without question, offering gentle affection rather than interrogation. Yet even he could not shield her from the new tension that lingered around her name whenever she walked through the village square. Catherine responded to gossip as she had responded to everything since childhood, with measured grace. She engaged in parish events, tended to children who admired her patience, and applied herself to the administrative tasks her father often struggled to manage alone. Yet beneath her poise, a disquiet hummed like an unresolved chord. She had never before been the subject of scrutiny, nor had she ever been kissed by a man who held both the power to wound her and the capacity to unsettle her with a single glance. She tried to bury the memory beneath ordinary routines, but it resurfaced during quiet moments, intruding upon her thoughts with frustrating clarity. The warmth of his hand, the conflicted pressure of his lips, the shock of feeling wanted and dismissed in the same breath, all of it formed a knot she could neither untangle nor ignore. It unsettled her not because she desired the Duke, she told herself, but because she had glimpsed something human beneath his polished exterior, something vulnerable and fiercely guarded. The Duke, meanwhile, found no refuge in the grandeur of Ravenshire. Adrian tried to resume his duties with the same stern precision that had defined him for years, yet his composure wavered at the edges, repeatedly pulled toward the memory of Catherine's steady gaze. He told himself the kiss had been a momentary loss of discipline, nothing more, but the lie held poorly. Every corridor she had walked seemed to echo with her quiet steps. Every room she had occupied retained a faint sense of warmth he could not dispel. Lady Emma observed these shifts with a sister's perceptiveness. She refrained from confronting him immediately, choosing instead to watch the tension tighten around him like an invisible vice. She noted how swiftly he turned away whenever her conversations drifted toward the village, how abruptly he cut short discussions of household staff whenever Catherine's name hovered too near. Silence was its own confession, and Emma heard it clearly. The scandal gained traction when a poorly written gossip column in London included a small, mischievous piece about the mysterious young woman dismissed from Ravenshire. Though the article lacked names, it provided enough detail to stir speculation. Adrian read it with mounting fury, for every embellished sentence reminded him of how his impulsive behavior had exposed Catherine to ridicule she did not deserve. He remembered her final, wounded dignity far too vividly to dismiss the matter as trivial. Anger turned inward quickly, corroding the pride he had relied upon for so long. He paced his study late into the night, revisiting every moment leading to that disastrous dismissal, seeing now his own cruelty with unflinching clarity. Yet he could not simply ride to her doorstep. Propriety held him prisoner, as did the knowledge that any gesture from him might worsen the gossip already swirling through their world. Still, inaction felt like cowardice, and the conflict gnawed at him. Catherine's unexpected comfort during this tumult came in the form of Nathaniel Harrow, a rising industrialist whose arrival in the parish brought with it the scent of coal, innovation, and the confident ambition characteristic of England's new economic class. He visited Catherine's father regarding a small land matter, and his attention drifted almost immediately to Catherine's intelligence and quiet resolve. Harrow admired strength without arrogance, and he perceived both in her. When he later presented her with a bound volume of poetry, in admiration of her discerning mind, Catherine received it with gratitude but also confusion, for she had never been the object of such pointed courtesy from a man outside her parish. Harrow's presence unsettled her in a way wholly distinct from the Duke's, less incendiary, more grounded, but she recognized the stirrings of interest in his gaze and felt unprepared for its implications. The Duke's internal conflict worsened as he learned of Harrow's growing admiration. Emma, compelled by concern, finally confronted him in the drawing room. She spoke with the frankness only a sister could employ, reminding him that silence breeds consequences just as surely as action. Adrian did not deny the truth. Instead, he confessed, haltingly, what he had done, what he regretted, and what he feared. Emma listened without judgment, though pain flickered briefly across her features as she realized how deeply her brother had been affected. She urged him to intervene before the situation hardened into permanent loss. Her words lodged in his thoughts long after she left the room, prompting a shift he had resisted for weeks. Adrian understood that hiding behind duty would not erase his mistake. It would only ensure Catherine suffered for it alone. Meanwhile, Catherine faced the gossip with increasing weariness. She did not blame Harrow for his kindness, yet she felt the weight of expectations beginning to surround her. Expectations for stability, respectability, and a future unmarred by scandal. Her father, perceptive as always, noticed the strain and offered gentle counsel. He reminded her that choices built from fear rarely yield happiness, though he did not pry into the true source of her apprehension. His quiet wisdom eased her, but did not resolve the conflict that now occupied her heart. Harrow's attention represented safety, while the Duke's memory tugged at something deeper, something far more treacherous. The turning point arrived on an evening when the last of the day's light glowed against Catherine's window, and a knock echoed through the vicarage. A small parcel lay on the step. No name, no crest, only a pressed white rose and a folded slip of paper containing 4 words written in a hand she recognized instantly. "I am deeply sorry." Her breath caught, not because of the apology itself, but because the sentiment exposed a vulnerability she had not expected him to express. She closed her fingers around the fragile petals, torn between indignation and hope. The gesture did not resolve her confusion, yet it stirred a longing she had tried relentlessly to silence. As the evening deepened into quiet, Catherine stood at her window holding the rose, unable to ignore the delicate pull toward the man who had both wounded her and now reached for forgiveness. For the first time since returning home, the future felt uncertain enough to tremble beneath her feet, yet strangely open, as though something long denied was drawing nearer with every passing hour. Adrian arrived in the parish at dusk beneath a muted sky, the sort of gray that softened edges and granted anonymity to those who sought it. He had left Ravenshire without informing anyone but his valet, choosing plain attire in hopes of avoiding notice. Yet despite his efforts, there was no disguising the bearing of a man accustomed to authority. Villagers paused in their evening routines to watch him pass, whispering among themselves about the stranger with the noble posture and troubled eyes. Adrian did not hear them. His mind circled only one purpose: to face Catherine, to correct what he had broken, and to silence the torment that had followed him through every corridor of Ravensshire since her departure. The white rose she had received had been a timid attempt, insufficient to convey the weight of his regret. Words, spoken plainly, were all that remained. Catherine stood in the vicarage orchard, sorting early pears into a shallow basket, when she felt the hum of awareness that often precedes recognition. She turned and saw him stepping between the trees, the last shards of daylight catching the faint sheen of his hair. Her breath faltered. He looked different here, stripped of the imposing backdrop of Ravensshire, his expression unguarded, almost uncertain. For a long moment neither spoke. The wind rustled through the branches, scattering a few leaves at their feet, and Catherine felt the peculiar sensation of the world narrowing to the space between them. "Miss Hartwell," he said at last, his voice softer than she remembered. "Thank you for not walking away." "I did consider it," she admitted, lifting her chin with quiet resolve. "But running solves nothing, Your Grace." He winced slightly at the formality. "Adrian," he murmured, "if you can manage it." Catherine hesitated, then inclined her head. "Very well. Adrian, why are you here?" He exhaled slowly, as someone preparing to step into cold water. "To apologize, not with flowers or anonymous tokens, but with sincerity." His gaze held hers steadily, though she could see the tremor beneath his composure. "I wronged you. I allowed rumor, frustration, and my own pride to guide my judgment rather than reason. And in doing so, I diminished a woman who deserved none of it." Catherine swallowed, feeling the old wound press against the present moment. "You humiliated me, Adrian, in front of others, without hearing a word of explanation." "I know," he said quietly. "I have replayed it endlessly. The moment itself and the kiss that followed." Her cheeks warmed despite her effort to remain calm. "That kiss should not have happened." "No," he agreed, "but I will not pretend it meant nothing. It revealed how deeply I was affected by you, by your composure, your honesty, your refusal to be intimidated by title." He paused, searching her expression. "It frightened me. I'm not a man who loses control. Yet you unraveled what I thought was unshakable discipline." Catherine lowered her gaze to the basket of pears, fingers brushing one absently. "Discipline cannot protect you from feeling," she said. "It can only conceal it." Her quiet observation struck him more keenly than accusation would have. He stepped closer, leaving only a careful distance between them. I came here because I wish to understand what stands between us. If I have ruined any chance of reconciliation, tell me honestly, and I will leave." Catherine looked up, and for the first time since Raven's hire, she allowed herself to speak the truth tangled inside her. "You hurt me. I have spent weeks trying to forget you, yet every attempt has only reminded me of the very thing I fear. That what passed between us was real, even if it should never have existed." She drew a breath, steady but fragile. And now there is another complication. Adrian's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Nathaniel Harrow. Yes, he has shown me kindness without judgment. He sees my worth without being reminded." Her voice wavered, but did not break. "He has expressed interest in a future with me. A simple, respectable future." A shadow crossed Adrian's expression, but he did not interrupt. "Do you return his interest?" "I do not know," she confessed. "He's a good man." And yet, her words trailed off unfinished. "And yet," Adrian repeated softly, "your heart resists simplicity." Catherine's silence was confirmation enough. Emboldened by the faint shift in the air, he stepped closer, though still with restraint. "Catherine, I do not ask for promises. Only the chance to earn what I so thoroughly jeopardized." He glanced toward the fading horizon. "There is much I must resolve. My father's past, political threats that linger like ghosts, obligations that pull at me from every direction. I could not, in honesty, offer you peace yet, but I would offer honesty, devotion, and the determination to stand beside you openly once my affairs are set in order." Before she could answer, the crack of twigs sounded at the orchard's edge. 3 villagers emerged from the shadows, faces drawn in suspicion. The tallest stepped forward, addressing Catherine without acknowledgement of Adrian's status. "Miss Hartwell, is this man troubling you? He's been wandering about the village, asking questions." Catherine's heart lurched. Adrian remained still, not insulted, only concerned by her reaction. She stepped toward the villagers with poised certainty. "He troubles me far less than rumor ever has," she said. "He is here by invitation." The men exchanged uncertain glances, then retreated with murmured apologies. As they left, Catherine released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Adrian looked at her with something like astonishment. "You defended me," he said softly. "You came here to speak truth," she replied. "The least I could do was offer mine." For a moment, the orchard felt suspended in time. The first stars appeared overhead, pale and expectant. Adrian's expression shifted from gratitude to something deeper, hope tempered by humility. "There is one more truth you should know," he said. "My father left debts, alliances, and secrets that now threaten Ravensshire. If I am to free myself and the estate, I must confront them directly. Once that is done, I will return to you, not in shadow, but in certainty." Catherine felt the weight of his confession settle between them. "You speak as though the future is already decided." "No," he said, voice low. "I speak as though it is worth fighting for." She met his gaze then, fully, without hesitation, and something unspoken passed between them, fragile yet unmistakably alive. "Very well," she said. "I will give you time. But know this, I cannot wait forever, nor can I promise what shape my heart will take while you are gone." He inclined his head, accepting the condition with solemn grace. "That is fair, Catherine, more than fair." The wind stirred once more, carrying the faint scent of pears and earth. Adrian stepped back, preparing to leave the orchard. Just before turning, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, yet firm with conviction. "I will return for you, not as a duke seeking convenience, but as a man seeking his future." Catherine stood in the dim glow of evening long after he disappeared between the trees, her pulse steady yet restless. Though uncertainty still clouded her path, the air felt subtly changed, alive with possibility. For the first time since Ravensshire, she allowed herself the quiet, perilous comfort of hope. Autumn arrived with a sharpened chill, the kind that cut through hesitation and demanded decisions. Adrian returned to Ravensshire with a resolve forged during sleepless nights and relentless inquiry. His father's ledgers, long neglected and deliberately obscured, revealed a network of debts entwined with the influence of Lord Ridley, a parliamentary figure who had preyed upon the late Duke's desperation. Ridley had used that leverage to pressure Adrian into political compliance, all under the guise of protecting the family name. Standing in his father's old study, Adrian felt a mingled grief and fury rise in him. He no longer feared scandal. He feared the future he might lose if he allowed the past to bind him. With deliberate calm, he collected every damning document and prepared for confrontation. The meeting took place in a dim London office thick with the scent of pipe smoke and pride. Ridley greeted him with a patronizing smile, certain the young Duke would yield once more. But Adrian placed the ledger on the table and laid out each incriminating detail with measured precision. Ridley's confidence shriveled as he realized the trap had reversed. Adrian spoke not as a man seeking escape, but as one asserting dominion over a legacy long shadowed by shame. When he left the room, Ridley's influence was fractured and the threat that had haunted Ravenshire dissolved. Yet victory felt strangely quiet. Adrian knew his battle had not been waged merely for the estate. It had been fought for the right to choose whom he might stand beside, without fear or obligation. Meanwhile, Catherine watched the changing season from the vicarage, feeling her own heart shift with the leaves. Nathaniel Harrow continued his visits, each more considerate than the last, offering companionship free of judgment. He never pressed her, but his admiration was unmistakable, woven into each courteous gesture. Catherine respected him deeply, and she knew a future with him would be stable, protected, and unmarred by society's disdain. And yet her soul resisted any path that required her to pretend her feelings for Adrian had faded. Harrow sensed this quiet conflict, and though it pained him, he did not withdraw. Instead, he addressed her gently one afternoon as they walked the narrow lane behind the church. "I hope you will choose what brings you peace," he said, his tone more earnest than sorrowful. "Even if that path does not lead toward me." His acceptance, generous and dignified, stirred a gratitude so profound it ached. Catherine pressed his hand in thanks, knowing she could not offer him more than respect. The moment clarified everything. Affection built on safety alone could not eclipse a love born from truth, however wounded or uncertain. Word of Adrian's victory in London traveled quickly, reaching Ravenshire in discreet murmurs. Emma confronted him the moment he returned, startled by the brightness in his eyes, something close to liberation. When he confessed that he meant to ride to the parish at dawn to speak with Catherine, Emma embraced him with a mixture of pride and apprehension. "Go as yourself," she urged softly. "Not as the Duke, not as a man redeemed by triumph. Go as the one she saw beneath the armor." Her advice lingered with him long into the night. The next morning, sunlight pierced the mist like a quiet herald. Catherine was tending roses in the vicarage garden when she heard the rhythmic approach of hoofs. The sound alone sent her pulse tumbling. She turned, expecting a messenger or perhaps Harrow, but froze when she saw Adrian dismounting near the gate, fully adorned in the dignity of his station, yet carrying none of its arrogance. It struck her instantly that he had not come in disguise, nor in secrecy. He had come openly, fully visible to every villager, his intentions declared before a single word passed between them. Her father emerged from the doorway, startled to see a duke standing on his modest path. Adrian approached him first, bowing with genuine respect. "Reverend Hartwell, I seek your permission to speak with your daughter." The vicar, though taken aback, recognized the sincerity in the young man's voice and stepped aside with a solemn nod. Adrian crossed the last few feet toward Catherine, and she felt the familiar tension return. Fragile, electric, impossible to ignore. "I said I would return," he began, "and I do so now with my affairs resolved and my conscience unburdened." He paused, searching her face with a quiet desperation. "Catherine, I cannot promise a life without scrutiny or its occasional cruelty, but I can promise honesty, affection, and a devotion I did not know myself capable of until I met you." Her breath trembled. "And what of society? Will those who claim I am unfit for Ravenshire? I am the Duke of Ravenshire, he replied, voice low and firm. If they challenge my choice, they challenge me, and I do not yield. He glanced toward the roses beside her, their petals glowing in the morning sun. You once said discipline cannot protect a man from feeling. You were right. I do not wish to be protected from what I feel for you. Her father watched from a respectful distance, his expression softened by the unmistakable sincerity before him. The villagers, drawn by curiosity, lingered near the edges of the garden, whispering. Yet Adrian seemed unaffected by their presence. His entire world had narrowed to the woman standing before him. With an exhale that held months of longing, he lowered himself onto one knee on the gravel path. The simple act struck Catherine with breathtaking force. This proud, disciplined man kneeling not out of obligation, but out of love. Catherine Hartwell, he said, his voice steady and reverent, will you allow me the honor of calling you my wife? Not because of duty, nor because of expectation, but because my future makes no sense without you. Emotion surged through her like a tide she could no longer resist. The fears that had once held her captive dissolved beneath the truth shining in his eyes. She knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she lifted his. Yes, she whispered, tears slipping free. Yes, Adrian, I will marry you. A ripple of astonished approval swept through the onlookers, though Catherine heard nothing but the sound of his relieved breath. Adrian rose and drew her gently to her feet, their foreheads resting together in a moment of quiet wonder. Two souls who had collided through error, pride, and longing, now bound by a choice freely made. The wedding took place weeks later in Ravenshire's stone chapel, adorned not with opulence, but with flowers from Catherine's own garden. When they spoke their vows, it felt less like a union of rank and more like the meeting of two steadfast hearts. As they stepped into the manor's sunlight after the ceremony, hand in hand, the past lay behind them like a shadow finally conquered, leaving only the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine until now.